Join me today as we take this plain little cheap dresser and turn it into this really pretty dresser. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. All right, so the base we're working with is just this cheap dresser from, I think it was from Dollar Tree. It was in with my where I'd kept my Dollar Tree Dollhouse furniture stash. And I'm not sure if they still make this one anymore, but the idea is not specific to this dresser. It's an idea you can use with any of these inexpensive pieces that you might have in your stash or that you find when you're out and about. It will work best, I believe, with ones like this where the drawers are just a single panel that do not actually open, because that will be a little easier to get our design put onto the front and lined up. For our design for the front, I have picked this piece of paper. This was in a set of card making paper. Just pick any design you love or that will go in your miniature room that has a really tiny design. This one has little tiny flowers and butterflies and just beautiful little things like that. So, and I have no idea where that came from. It's been in my stash for years. So our first job is going to be to remove these handles because they'll be in our way. So I've got my heat gun and I'm afraid it's going to be noisy. I'm only going to do one on camera and then I will turn the camera off and do the rest off camera. So just aim the heat gun at one of your handles. This should, after a few minutes, loosen that glue up. Sometimes, yeah, a little bit more. It does get warm, so be careful. It'll loosen it up to the point where it will remove without pliers. If you need pliers, very carefully use a pair of needle nose pliers to get in there, but be careful because that can damage the wood on the little knobs. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get all of those off the front of this. When I get that accomplished, I'll come back and we'll go on to our next step. All right, all the little knobs are removed, and you can tell this one gave me trouble because I actually burnt the wood with my heat gun, but that's okay because it'll be covered. Now I have all my handles in this container with a lid that I borrowed from my kitchen. This way I won't lose them and the cat won't decide to play with them. Now I want to match the background color. I'm going to start with white, and if I decide I need to warm it up, I've got a tiny bit of vanilla cream paint that I can mix with some white to make it the right color. But it'll need at least 2 coats, and I've got white paint here. So this is going to be simple. I'm just going to coat the entire parts that are, I'm not going to do the back of it or the bottom simply because those parts will never show unless I end up with extra paint. But I'm going to paint this. Now if you have big wads of glue, which it looks like I missed one there, so after I'm going to paint this, once the paint dries, we'll get rid of any of these little, like this is raising grain. It's showing where all the glue globs are. So I'm going to get this painted. I'm going to let the paint dry, and I'm only going to do 1 coat, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next step, which will be neatening this up a bit. All right, now that the paint is dry, this raised up the grain quite a bit because this is really cheap wood. So I'm going to go through each side and I'm going to see what needs to be fixed. Sanding off those spots. I'm taking some finer grain sandpaper. Actually, this is coarser. Do I have a finer grain? Yeah, there we go. That's better. This I'm not as concerned about because we're going to cover that. So off camera, I'm going to go through, I'm going to sand this down to where it's nice and smooth. Then I'll wipe it with a paper towel, and then I'll give it another coat of the white paint so I can see how it's going to look. So when that paint is on and dried, I'll come back and we can go on to the next step. All right, so I decided I can't live with the fact this top is on really, really wrong. It's flush on this side and sticks out here. So I've been playing with it a little bit, and I'm going to take the heat gun to it some more. I debated whether taking it off would be better, or if it would be better to... I'm keeping the blade way away from my fingers. There we go. That'll be much better. Now, I'll just have to fix that paint. Now, let's get this on correctly this time, which means finding my ruler. How wide is this? This is... Let me do some measuring and figuring, and I'll be right back. All right, assuming I measured correctly, I have marked the middle here and here. Now I had off camera debated whether I wanted to take this off or if I wanted to just cut it flush on the other end. And I know you guys, how many of you were screaming at me that the top was on wrong? I knew that it was off, but I didn't realize how far off it was till I got in there and started painting and getting it set up, and I'm like, ooh, that can't be. All right, line up that line. Make sure that's flush with the back. Okay, and I'm going to set it like this so that its own weight will hold it together till the glue dries. When that glue dries and I've touched up this paint here, I will come back and we'll go to the next step. All right, all the glue and the paint are dry, and I cut a piece of my paper that fits the drawer fronts. It's just a tiniest bit wider and just the size to fit in top to bottom. And I have a straight edged paintbrush, and I'm going to go in, and I've got matte Mod Podge here on this. Go in. Oh, and the other thing I did was I made sure all of the holes for the knobs were clean. Now try not to get any Mod Podge down in those dips between where it's supposed to show where one drawer ends and the next one starts. Because we're going to put this all in at once. Now this would be really cool if you have scrapbook paper that has like a scene on it. That would look really neat. Try to get really good coverage on just the drawer fronts, but don't miss any spots. And I didn't put as much paint on the drawer fronts because I knew they were going to be covered. If you have a bunch of Mod Podge that goes down over the edge of one of your drawers, go ahead and wipe that out so that it's not there. Making sure you've got your paper, if there's a top and a bottom of directional design, make sure you've got that oriented the way you want it. Put this on. And really press it into the Mod Podge and then let it dry. So I'm going to let this get dry. When this is completely dried, I'll come back and we will make it look like it's individual drawers again. All right, my Mod Podge has dried overnight. We're going to start with this. This edge, I got pretty even with the edge of the drawers. This one, you can see it's got a little fold. So I've got an emery board. Usually, by running the emery board over, and it might take a little work, it will just peel away. And you'll get a nice, fairly smooth edge. You might need to sand it a little more. But you do need to make sure that everything is stuck down nice and tight before you do this. It's loose, I just can't get a hold of it. Okay. Now, I have a dotting tool. And I'm going to find this edge. And I'm trying not to pierce through the paper on the first try, the first run across. Now, make sure that your emery board is nice and clean before attempting this. Otherwise, you could, if you've sanded something with paint on it, for instance, you could actually embed some paint into your paper. So I am going to finish up on all of these cuts, and when that's done, I'll come back and we'll go to the next step. All right, as a design choice, I've decided to keep this as a single drawer, not do the extra drawer, the extra two cuts in the middle to make it 3 drawers. All we got to do is go down, find your hole where your handles were, where your drawer pulls were. And they're fairly easy to find by poking with your tool. I'm just using a fairly skinny ball tool here. I'm going to increase that a little bit because I do need to get my handles back in there. Now, to go with my paper, I have picked 3 colors of paint. I decided to stick with the white for the sides. And I've got a spot there that's not sticking down. You can see that paper lifted up just a little bit. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take just a toothpick and get a little bit of Mod Podge. I might have to put some out on a paper, on a container. And go through and make sure, let's get out a little bit. There's several spots there. Because if it lifts up, you do need to get it back down. So, and I find a toothpick is the easiest to put this down with. All right, now I pick these colors. I am going to get a couple of brushes. And I also have my white. So I'm going to start by taking a little white paint on a very tiny brush. And this is optional, but I want to make sure, because I did scrape off some of my paint down in those spots. You'll need a very thin brush to do this because you don't want to get the paint out of that little crease. And if it does, you can wipe it off. All right, then I'm going to take this green. I'm going to paint this like skirting at the bottom, and I'm going to take the blue and paint the top. When those are done, I'll come back and I'll show you what they look like, and we'll go to the next step. All right, the top and the skirting are all painted. I'll set that off to the side to dry. I might need 2 coats. I'll decide that when it gets dry. And now I have all my drawer pulls on this piece of masking tape, and it's taped down to my work surface. And I have a very pale pink. I picked all the colors out of my paper. And then I'm just going to put a very thin coat of paint on all of these. And again, I might need a second coat. I'll decide that when it's dry. But I'm going to go through, I'm going to paint all these. I'm going to let the paint dry, do a second coat if I need to, and then when that's done, I will dry. I will come back and we will start putting these knobs on and put a clear coat on. So I'll see you when these dry. All right, all my paint has dried, and I did use some dotting tools and my knife and a pair of tweezers to get all of these holes cleaned out, because there was glue from when the knobs were glued in, and there was paint and all kinds of stuff down in them. So I'm dipping one of my little knobs into some tacky glue and then put it down in there. And I'm just going to proceed with the other 7 of these. I'm going to let the glue dry, and when all of these are in and dry, I'll come back and we can put a clear finish on and see how this looks. All right, those are all glued on and the glue is dry. So now I just have some satin Mod Podge, and I'm going to give the entire dresser a coat of satin Mod Podge. When this dries, I will show you this dresser in a room. So I'll see you when this is dry. Well, there is our little dresser in place with our unicorn from the other day and a little doll to show you the size. I love how this turned out, and this could be done in so many different themes. You're only limited by the scrapbook paper that you can find, or even if you're talented, maybe draw a scene on some drawing paper and do that. That could be really cool too. I'd love to see what you do with this project. Be sure and post pictures on the Facebook group if you do this. I'd love to see it. Be sure and check the blog post for photos and more information. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to see in future videos? If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, I encourage you. Hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.